Welcome to the Wilmac Wire. I'm Emily Miller, joined by my co-host, Steve McDonnell. On this show, we talk with the drivers, the leaders, innovators, and decision makers pushing customer interaction technology and AI forward. And because we're proud to call Western New York home, we also spotlight the drivers in our own community, the people and organizations shaping growth and innovation right here. Let's get into it.
What's up, Steve? How are things? How's your week going so far?
It's going good. I'm pumped for our next guest. We get someone in our industry after hearing from the great Ian Mortimer last time.
Yeah. With you being a co-host, I'm excited to kind of talk with the Rochester business leaders like Ian from last episode, but also incorporating people like Tom too. Because for our listeners, we've had quite a few episodes recently with industry analysts like John Arnold, Dave Michaels, and now today Tom Brannen, who is, like you said, another awesome analyst who runs his own analyst firm called On Convergence. So I think in the conversation with him today, we definitely need to touch on the movement going on in the industry. I mean, the Nice Cognigy acquisition, and then more recently, the Calabrio Verint merger with Thoma Bravo. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the timing of this is perfect to see the Verint Calabrio merger. Verint being brought private and merging with Calabrio, pretty exciting. And to get an analyst on like Tom to get his opinion, I think is great. Obviously, we've had some analysts on. And for our audience, we're not trying, there are analysts we do talk to about our products, about our solutions, but for the podcast, we're just trying to keep it open and get people's opinion on the industry. So we'll try to keep doing that. And I think it's great with all the movement. A couple, what I would term almost legacy companies coming together by private equity. Very interesting strategy. We'll see how that plays out. Yeah. And then obviously Nice at the forefront of buying a big an AI company. Obviously the revenues aren't big, but they paid a lot of money for it.
That's for sure.
So all exciting stuff that we'll hope to get Tom's opinion on.
Yeah, we'll turn it over to him now and have him join. I think he's coming from us up in the mountains in Georgia. So we'll see how the quality of this podcast goes, but should be a good one. All right, we'll turn it over to the interview. All right, Steve and I have an exciting guest on the podcast today for the Wilmac Wire, Mr. Tom Brannen. So I'm going to give our audience a little bit of an intro, and then Tom, we can just get this conversation started. And thanks for joining us. So first things first for our audience, Tom Brannen. He is an industry analyst and founder of On Convergence, where he's advising on CX and the contact center technology strategies of organizations. For further background, he's actually been consulting in the space for 25 plus years. And he started On Convergence as an analyst in 2019. So congratulations on 6 years, Tom. What I found super interesting when doing my background research on Tom was the fact that he creates super extensive video content. He has a really impressive YouTube page and is super comfortable on camera, which you don't see as often with analysts, like attending conferences and providing that video feedback. So commending you there and encouraging our listeners to go check out his YouTube, which I'll call out at the end. And he's also just a frequent speaker and thought leader on CX transformation. So we're very happy, Tom, to have you on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Emily and Steve. It's great to be with you guys on the Wilmac Wire. You've made it in this industry when you get invited to be a part of this podcast, and I'm not even kidding about that. I saw some of my colleagues. I know Ian was just on. I saw Dave and John have also been on as well. So being in that kind of company just makes me really happy. So thanks so much for inviting me.
You just made my day, Tom. I think we can end the podcast there. I'm just kidding. But appreciate the shout out. We're gonna get the ball rolling by talking about kind of your career journey. You've spent your career helping businesses kind of connect through technology. You talk about that human to human convergence.
Yeah.
What led you to make customer experience your focus?
Well, I started out in the business right out of college, working for a consulting firm, and just fell in love with the business. It's one of those things. I love the industry, and I always have. And I kind of started out more on the more technical side of building networks and helping companies maybe back in the old days get a new PBX or upgrade their phone system or and those projects were fun and they were good and I could help them save money and make sure they were making wise decisions. But I really was kind of drawn to the contact center projects because if you're buying new infrastructure, you're buying new hardware, software. If you have any contact center, then that's going to be part of the project as well. So, and I was especially drawn to that side of it because it really is kind of that connection between companies and their customers. And, there's so much that interested me, how you improve those interactions. And back in the old days, it was purely phone calls. So like, how can we make this experience better? How can we design a better experience? And the other cool part of it was you had such, even back in the old days, you did have analytics. It was one of the few things that was tracked inside the organization, and so I'm kind of a data guy as well. So I got to play with both sides of that. How do we improve our customer interactions, and then how can we improve the data? How can we make sure that we're collecting the right data, and then how are we interpreting the data to improve our customer experience? We didn't call it customer experience back then. We were just trying to make things suck less for our customers. And a lot of the improvements that I was working on were centered around that. Okay, it's one thing just to have calls sent around, but how do we get better analytics? How do we know in real time why customers are calling? How can we adapt in real time to changes going on in our contact centers? So I love that space so much. I love building contact centers. I was kind of brought in to help fix kind of troubled contact centers, and I just love that process so much that when I knew I wanted to be an industry analyst, and I knew I could pick the things that I wanted to track, I knew contact center was going to be at the top of the list, and then CX, and then I mean it's just blown up over the last 5 or 6 years since I've been an analyst with the advent, or not advent, but the emphasis now on AI in driving that experience. It was kind of one of those right place, right time kind of moments. And I found too, as an analyst, there's some things that don't excite me as much. Things, that are more just tactical things. You got to have phones, and unified communications is great. But to me, the real strategic, place that you can make the most difference is in customer experience. So I'm just thrilled to be active in this space, to be tracking it, and to be working with such amazing vendors that are in this space.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Can I pause really quick? You're super blurry on my screen and you're cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know if it's on our end, um,
I'm over kind of a
but that's
temporary
just what
internet
what
connection,
I'm,
so I know I know it'll upload at the
okay.
end. So I know it seems to be
Yeah.
recording okay on me, and I can see all fine. So um, it just may take a
Okay.
little while at the
Good.
end to upload, and then it'll um, should be okay. But I apologize.
Then
I'll
it'll
just
go.
best I can do.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's okay. I just didn't want to I didn't want to cut you off. But yeah, just checking in there. Um, all right, we'll get back into it then. Um, all right, so yeah, quite an evolution kind of over that career journey. The consulting to the CX space, interested in that contact center technology. So you're in good company here on the Wilmac Wire for sure. But tell us a little bit more about On Convergence and kind of why you started it and what kind of companies you work with.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of started it based out of frustrations in my consulting uh, career, and I was, I was wanting to do more. I was wanting to explore more of what's possible I was kind of, in some cases, some of the projects I was on were very restricted by budget or resources. And so I would come up with recommendations my clients weren't able to implement fully, or it was going to take them a long time. And I really wanted to explore more of what's possible. Really wanted to push the envelope about, and so I started attending conferences. I started, speaking and doing research and writing for No Jitter. And kind of through that process, doing that on the side, I kind of came to the conclusion that that was really what I was most passionate about, were those kinds of activities. And then I had a chance to kind of reinvent and go through a process of, what do I want to do when I grow up? And it wasn't just like, hey, I'm going to be an analyst. It was like, what am I good at? What are my assets? What in my background is there value in my consulting background that I could apply in other areas? I kind of went through an exhaustive visioneering process, and at the end of that, realized that if I had to put a label on it, it was industry analyst. And so I try to take that kind of background of real world consulting, of the problems my clients had, the struggles they had, and then seeing how emerging technology can solve those problems. So I see myself as kind of a dot connector between those two worlds of real world problems, and innovation and technology, and then help connect those dots based on my understanding of the real problems, as well as what's possible, and then help communicate that to the industry. You said earlier, I love to create video content, so my primary, thing I'm going to pull out of my utility belt of analyst tools is to create video content, and that's exactly what I've done. I've been very blessed to have success doing what I set out to do. So, the companies that I work for are primarily companies like you guys, and some of the partners that you guys have in the CX space, to help tell their story, to help them with their vision of where they're headed, to talk to their engineers and talk to their customers and create content that helps the marketplace understand what can be kind of complex at times. And that's really what I want to do.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great.
Tom, while you were kind of talking about vendors and whatnot, I kind of wanted to get your opinion. We obviously partner with a lot of what I would call WEM
Hmm.
vendors that are attempting to get into the CCaaS CX game. But we're close with NICE, who obviously is the biggest player for that world, and then we're also pretty close with Verint and Calabrio, ironically.
Hmm.
And the news out this week is uh, the large PE firm Thoma Bravo is going to take Verint private and merge them with another one of their portfolio companies, Calabrio. Do you have any opinion on that? What that means for both organizations and kind of the direction that they might go?
It's going to be really interesting to see this one. In general, I don't love these kinds of mergers, especially when two kind of similar companies merge, especially under the umbrella of private equity. Like it to me, and I know there's some strategic alignment. Like I know, and I'll be with Verint in a couple of weeks, so I mean, I'm hoping to get some of that kind of insight that will of course be sharing. But this one, just when it was announced, it just, I don't know, and I mean, kind of, I know a lot of other analysts that aren't overly enthused with this one, because of that kind of, it's not necessarily strategic, and then it's also kind of like, is this going to be the best thing for both companies? And I think time will tell, but this one is one that I just candidly I don't love. I do love what Verint's been doing. I mean, I love their AI strategy, their bot strategy. I think it's amazing. So they've built beyond kind of their WEM space some great functionality. I always thought they would kind of merge with a CCaaS company to kind of fill out, some of the missing areas that they have, as well as bring some of that extra stuff to a CCaaS company. So I'm a little surprised that didn't happen, although that still could happen. This story may not be over yet. This may just be step one, and potentially solution to really build something special under their private equity. Or it could just be let's consolidate, let's get rid of redundancies, let's increase profitability for these companies that in some cases need some help. So this one was a little one I wasn't super enthused about because of that. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I kind of where you were heading with this, with what your answer, I am agreeing with. And I'll throw it out because I'm not an analyst, but I think that this particular PE firm probably has their eyes on another CCaaS vendor who is struggling in the public market, but working with them closely and hearing what customers say about this vendor, everyone seems to like them. Their stock obviously is not showing that. So, and they have, some turnover going on, but it seems like they would be a good fit for this pairing, and they already obviously work super close with Verint. So it makes sense for that to happen. But obviously the fear that you were also talking about, it could just be a typical PE takeover, drop the margins, make this look attractive for another strategic and sell it off, which would be too bad because obviously Verint, they've been a powerhouse for a long time. So for that, I always thought they would be acquiring someone, not this happening. But I understand, that these PE firms have gotten so big and have so much capital behind them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. That's for sure. We work closely with a couple divisions at Verint, one in particular in the trading floor area, which I definitely have concern for. I don't really see them fitting what Bravo has in what I would imagine the game plan for this, and really sticking to the CX AI space. I don't see, a trading floor compliance division fitting in that. So, we have some fear or skepticism that might be part of a little sell-off because Verint is huge. They do have different divisions that aren't going to fit with what this PE firm's plan is. But I think overall we're going to see over the next, starting right now for the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a lot of consolidation, especially now that you have these huge players jumping in this game with Salesforce, Zoom, Microsoft. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, we've always knew there were too many vendors in some of these areas. So we've been kind of looking for consolidation for some time now, and it just hasn't happened. And so it's and there's lots of reasons. There was COVID. There was the rising interest rates made it more expensive to do this kind of thing. So if you don't have cash sitting around, it can be expensive to try to acquire, and then raising valuations and lowering valuations. It's just been a little bit of a hard thing. I think also in some of these emerging areas, like we're talking about, there was also so much opportunity for organic growth. You didn't have to go out and buy it, and so you could just go get it. And so I think, as companies start to struggle with that aspect, and maybe sales starts to slow or not grow as fast as their investors, are pushing them, that all of a sudden they have to explore some other options. And there's just, with this AI world too, it's not just about, checking a box of functionality. It's like, does it really work? And does it really work well? And if you have areas where your quality isn't as good as it should be, then, you've got to fix that. And in a lot of cases, you can fill some holes, with a merger like this. So, it's very interesting. It's interesting how it's rolled out. It's interesting that Calabrio is the one that kind of announced this, and maybe that's a little telling of how this is going to go. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I thought obviously Medallia is going to be around. That's another portfolio company of Thoma Bravo, but it doesn't look like they're going to roll it up into this. But you'd think that would be another attractive company to be rolled up. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you kind of giving us your hot take on that, Tom. I agreed though when you mentioned like the optics piece of Calabrio announcing it. Like I got the email from Calabrio yesterday morning. I thought just my marketing brain went to optics and what that portrayed. So thought that was interesting. But moving on, we've been talking a lot about CX, the contact center technology. Wilmac kind of got its foot in the door there with our specialization and voice data in particular, the call recordings that are going on within the call center CX space. In your opinion, do you think voice data is more powerful for improving the customer experience or the employee experience, and why?
I mean, of course it's both. So, it's hard to, um, I think the customer experience, and it's great to talk about both because they both come into play. And, I think you can do both, and that's kind of the cool thing. You don't have to pick like, well, do we want to focus on the customer experience or the employee experience? We can do both, and we're seeing so much success in this area. One of the lowest hanging fruit is using this data to help agents do their job. To kind of pre-populate answers to them based on how the conversation's going, and so it does two things. It helps the agent respond faster. Maybe it can be less work for the agent, and then obviously the customer is going to be served faster, which is what we all want. And it's interesting. It's good for new agents. It's good for medium agents, particularly that are handling a little bit more sophisticated transactions that can be brought up to speed faster. So it kind of helps from a training perspective as well. So it's one of these things where it kind of can check all those boxes. And can really, it's interesting too how it's presented to agents. Is this something that's going to replace them, or is this something that's going to make their job easier? And I think, by focusing on the right parts of that, you can be very successful. And take a look at things that agents complain about, like, well, I have to log into 12 different systems. Well, how can we use, these tools to help lower that number of systems you have to log into, and help you have information faster. We're all getting tired of, oh, my computer's running slow today. Like, why are we still hearing that? Why is that still a thing? Like, these things should be solved by now, and they're not, and they're complicated. There's lots of reasons, but using this technology to kind of help people just have that data, instantly is going to drive both experiences.
Yeah, I was for sure setting you up there for I can't commit to either because it's helpful for both. But yeah, you kind of covered on both pieces. I was thinking about the QA piece for employee training, and then I mean even the CX piece for training AI models, empowering agents, that sort of thing. And you briefly mentioned it when you were talking a little bit about your career journey, but I guess AI is the hot topic. Now we talk about it with pretty much every analyst that we've had a conversation with on the Wilmac Wire. But is there any AI tool in particular you're seeing the most success with your customers? Is it on the CX side, more customer facing? Is it on the internal employee side, like Copilot? What are you thinking there?
I think there's a couple of areas. I mean, you mentioned QA. I think that it's completely changing the way we evaluate the success of calls. So, I mean, right off the bat, I've talked to a couple of banks in particular that have gone to a complete AI based, they don't do customer surveys anymore. Their supervisors aren't listening to random calls, scoring them. Everything's done by AI, and they've had tremendous success with this. So it's more accurate than humans were, and it's just so easy. You enable it, and it's there, and it's doing it. And supervisors love it because it frees them up for more coaching. They're not having to go through these just repetitive tasks of listening to random calls, so they love it. And agents love it too because now they're graded on their whole body of work, not just 2 calls a week or whatever they're looking at. So the agents actually like it because it's telling a more complete story. It's not just based on a random sample of a few calls. And then and you're getting more accurate data because now you're looking at all calls. So I think QA is absolutely been a huge area of success. and kind of a no-brainer. Like, I don't know why everybody doesn't just enable that today, because it just makes all the sense in the world. And to me, that's, what I'm seeing is there's companies that are kind of focusing on these kind of high impact, low effort areas. And that's a great example of a high impact, low effort. You're turning on a feature, you're tuning it a little bit, of course, but it's basically going to start analyzing that data without much effort. And then the impact is now you're scoring all your calls, and your agents are getting a score for everything. So I love use cases like that, because it works really, really well. If it went a little haywire, it wouldn't be the end of the world. It's not like it's going to go out and do something crazy, because it's not, agentic. It's not customer facing. So to me, I think that's one that I've been hearing a lot of success about. But you can definitely take it further from there. And one of the cool things that I really, really like about AI is how once you start collecting this data, and it has access to this data, that it can begin to identify its own use cases. And I think that's one of the real interesting things. I think it's important for companies to say, okay, we're going to start with QA, we're going to start with call summarization or something that's pretty easy. But then while they've got these tools in place, start going, well, AI, what do you think we should be doing? What do you think would make some high impact for us? And that's really amazing too. This same financial client, their AI surfaced that they were getting a lot of people that were directed from the website with a certain error code, and it was happening a lot, and it was all of a sudden, and the agents didn't really pick up on how often it was happening. They were just getting a few calls here and there. But they basically added, they went in and figured out that yeah, there was an error on the website that was causing this problem. So they went to IT and said, hey, can you fix this website problem? Because it's sending everybody to the call center. And they did, and it was the equivalent of 5 full-time employees, of just answering these website error codes. But it's hard for a human to go through and figure out, well, why are we getting an influx of calls and what is it? AI was able to do it, instantly, and able to pinpoint the problem, and show, well, if you reflect this, change this one thing, well, that's 5 FTE count. So, that to me is where AI gets really exciting, when it can start to surface up the automation, surface up the things, and even script them, test them, and implement them. That to me is where I think things get really exciting.
So, Tom, to that point, I agree with everything you're saying there, and I think we're just starting. It looks like there's construction going on below us, or you can probably hear that. But what I was going at is, we are in upstate New York right now, and we have offices in Toronto and Manhattan, and our customer base is national and international. And since we've started to put a focus on upstate New York, we've noticed, you talk about back in the old days, you were helping people kind of set up the phone lines, and I'll use the company like Mitel. We still have pretty significant sized contact centers in this region that are still sitting on-prem Mitels that we're just trying to get them to move to some cloud solution, let alone start building out infrastructure for AI. Do you feel like there's still a lot of contact centers out there that still need to get through a couple more steps before they can even look into kind of diving into AI? Because we definitely see that there's some that are ready to go, advanced, their infrastructure is ready for AI. But then there's plenty out there that still have a long way to go before they can even kind of look into these types of possible applications.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 types of customers you're talking about. I mean, the ones that are just so simple, they just want to keep it simple. They just want to answer the phone, and they just want, very basic functionality. And that's going to be the smaller market, but even up in the mid market a little bit, that just don't have the need or the vision or whatever it is that it takes to put this together. They just don't have it, and that's fine. I mean, there's successful businesses that maybe they just say, we want people to call us. We want just real personal interactions, and that's their business. That's fine. The other side are the ones that just got stuck with old technology, and it's been hard to get out of it. And for those, I think, what we're seeing is, you know, because a lot of this CX story was driven around CCaaS sales. So it's like you have to move to the cloud, and you can't innovate unless you move to the cloud. So that was the messaging of the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. And it was all about just getting people from premise to cloud so they could do all these advanced things. And we saw a lot of that activity, very very interesting sales motion that was about. I mean, but how many of those customers ever took the next step? I mean, they got to the cloud and maybe they're a little underwhelmed, maybe they were a little bit disappointed, and then they just changed cloud providers because they felt like they didn't get what was promised to them. So there was a lot of that. And what we've kind of realized is that it doesn't really matter where your core telephony is, whether it's on premise or a private cloud, or you can take a Mitel solution and you can layer on AI and these CX tools on top of it. And what we're seeing is the vendors now starting to actually sell into that. Even companies like NICE that have wanted to sell the full suite, now they're starting to say, well, you don't have to do the full suite. You can layer our AI, and then you can use whatever you want to set up those, to route phone calls, because that's not very strategic. At the end of the day, how your phone calls are routed, it's not strategic. Now the AI that's making those decisions is. So I think there's a unique opportunity for even some of those premise clients to maybe get to time to value faster. Verint's talked a lot about this, because they don't really sell CCaaS. They're just like, you keep whatever you have, and we'll get our data connectors in there, and we'll start collecting data, and we can have bots up in 30 days running in your Mitel environment, doing whatever it is you need done. So I think there's an interesting opportunity here for organizations to get to time to value faster by focusing on the application side rather than going through a 3 to 5 year cloud migration strategy. And what we've done as an industry, we're changing a little bit of saying, well, you've got to go through that process before you can do this stuff that has value. And now we're starting to see that flipped of like, actually, you can achieve the value today, show those wins, leverage AI, and then move to the cloud as you want. It could be staged. It could be a 3-year project where you move a location at a time, or a division at a time. You're not in a hurry, because you're going to kind of have AI over your entire infrastructure, whether it's premise or cloud, and the AI doesn't care. Like it really doesn't. It's going to have those connectors. It's going to pull data. It's going to do what it does. So I love that story, because it for some of these organizations that just feel handcuffed to the older technology, they could be years away from seeing some of this innovation. And it doesn't really have to be that way. And now the industry's starting to recognize that. And by the way, Mitel's doing some cool stuff as well in CX. They actually are building a modern, AI CX platform right now. So I mean, and some of these customers are in private, they're in private cloud, or they're in premise for a reason. They're in y'all work in regulated businesses, so it would make total sense that you would have clients that aren't super excited about moving to the cloud. So there are reasons why companies are still on-prem or in a private cloud instance. Very good reasons. And so I like that there's kind of two approaches. One is to dabble a little bit in the cloud with kind of a trusted solution, or just leverage some other private cloud AI technologies that are now available.
Yeah, 100%, Tom. Thanks for digging into that a little bit. As you can tell, it's something that we're trying to educate our local region on, being one of the sole providers up here. It's just always interesting to hear the different takes. And I mean, you touched on it at the beginning, but the complexity of the industry and the technology that we're talking about in and of itself is intimidating. So to think through kind of the different strategies that you can take and the different ways to think about it, it's refreshing. So appreciate you sharing that. I know we're running short a little bit on time, and who knows when they're going to start the drilling again underneath us. So, before we close, Steve, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask Tom or pose to him before we wrap up? You're muted, Steve. Just heads up.
I was muting myself in case the drilling came. Thanks, Tom, for coming on. It was great to get your opinion on the Verint Calabrio. I'm getting, because of our partnerships with them, a lot of emails and questions and what's going on. What does this mean for all their partners and what direction they're going? So it'll be a interesting next few months, but appreciate your insight into that. And then, as always, the AI conversation will keep on ticking, and appreciate any insight on that as well. So thanks a lot. Really appreciate your time.
No, it's great to be with you guys.
Yeah.
I always
All right.
love
Tom.
these types of conversations. So thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Last question for you. Are there any exciting projects or initiatives that you have coming up that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I'm doing some research, kind of focusing on vertical markets right now. So I've got a couple of interesting projects I think coming up there. And then I go to a lot of events. It's one of the fun parts of my job. So I'll be covering Five Nines analyst event as well as their customer event later this fall. Be at Verint's event in Orlando, covering it, as well as an analyst summit with NICE and probably one or two others thrown in the mix there. So, be on the lookout for my event coverage. I try to offer my kind of three takeaways. So if you weren't able to go to the event, just one analyst's perspective of what kind of struck him. And so it's something I love to do, and something I'm real passionate about is kind of going to those events, hearing from the leaders in the industry, and then making videos about it. So it's something I really love to do. So be sure to check those out.
Yeah, love to hear it.
Yeah, that's great, Tom. One last question before we let you go.
Yeah,
I'd love to get your insight on how Mr. Scott Russell, how you think Scott Russell is doing as the new CEO of NICE, and what his direction is going to be.
Great question. I was a huge fan of Barack. Like I just loved him so much, and so the change has been been really interesting to see.
He was great.
And I bring up Barack for a reason because in conversations with him, he would say that the hardest part of his job is what to say no to, because he's like, you can say yes to everything. People are coming to you all the time with these amazing ventures and acquisition opportunities, and they're all great. They're all worthy of saying yes to, on face value. But most of them are not the right thing, or not the best use of your time or your cash or whatever it is that it's going to require. So I think he was really good at it. And even in hindsight, history judges him well about what he said yes to and what he said no to. So I think that's the challenge Scott has. Scott's a completely different personality. I met him earlier this year, and you feel him when he walks into the room. Barack's kind of quiet. Scott walks into the room, and you know it, and you feel it. So completely different personality. And he's obviously made a big splash with the partnerships that he's brought on board, and then going out and writing a $955 million check is a bold statement as well. So we'll see. I mean, this is one that that the analysts did like, and are excited about seeing what can come out of this because of the strategic value of it. But time will tell. That's a big bet. And the big bets NICE has placed in the past, going back to the various acquisitions they made have paid off, and they are a leader because of making those right moves. And so I do like the vision, though. It's something that's just a little thing that I thought of, like I was talking about what I'm what I care about. And I don't care as much about UCaaS as I used to. To me, it's just not very strategic. And I was wondering, will I feel the same way about CCaaS, where I just don't really care anymore about CCaaS, and as an analyst, and I think I'm kind of there, to be honest with you. But there's still a ton of money there. So some of these companies, will they over pivot away from easy money, in the CCaaS space, to try to go up market and try to get something that I don't know if the market's ready for? How they do that, how they make those investments, but still keep their core kind of cash cow money business cranking away. Man, those guys, I was thinking today, there is some executive turnover, and you kind of see why. It's so hard to make those right bets and keep doing it over and over again, and all the pressure from investors, stockholders, and employees, and customers. Man, I would not want the job. So looking forward to getting to spend more time with Scott here later this fall, and obviously following the progress of everything he's doing. So he hadn't sat back and just let things happen. He's definitely been proactive, which is what you got to do in this world.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just to build on that, the movement that's happened in the past, this summer especially, I'm sure it has kept you on your toes, Tom. It's kept us on our toes over here at Wilmac. So kind of appreciate you sharing your insights and thoughts on that. All right. For our listeners, if you are interested in learning more about Tom and following his work, like he mentioned, you can find him under Thomas Brannen on LinkedIn. You can also find On Convergence, that's one word, On Convergence, on their website, onconvergence.com, on LinkedIn. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, check out Tom's video content, which is on Convergence's YouTube page. So make sure to check that out there. Tom, with some of those events you called out, hopefully you'll be able to connect with the Wilmac Tech team in person there. I'll make sure to reach out to you prior if we're at any of those. But in the meantime, have a great rest of your summer. Appreciate your time. And we'll chat soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tom.
Right. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for listening to the Wilmac Wire. If you liked today's conversation, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or watch full episodes on our YouTube channel. You can also learn more about Wilmac Technologies and our work in customer interaction technology at wilmactech.com. We'll be back soon with more conversations with the drivers, those shaping our industry and those building right here in Western New York. See you next time.